Harley just dropped a bomb and did it without saying a word. No ads, no hype, just one quiet change that hit harder than any ad ever could. A price so low it shook the ground and raised some serious questions. Why now? Why so sneaky? And what does it really mean? Stick around, because this wasn't just a price cut. It was a signal, and what it says might change everything. Harley's best move ever. Harley-Davidson didn't make an announcement. There was no press release, no flashy ad, no company video. Just one quiet change on a product page. The Harley-Davidson Nightster now had a new price, $9,999, and that single number hit like a shockwave. For years, Harley's entry-level bikes had been pushing over $17,000. Mid-tier cruisers like the Softail Deluxe and Lowrider ST, those often reached $30,000 once you added dealer fees and basic accessories. For many riders, especially blue-collar riders, Harley became something you admired but couldn't afford. So when that $9,999 tag dropped, it didn't just feel like a discount. It felt like a crack in the wall. The kind of price people hadn't seen from Harley in years. It raised questions fast. Was Harley coming back to its roots? Were they finally listening? Or was this something else entirely? The strangest part? Harley said nothing. No celebration, no welcome back message, no CEO speech about making bikes for the people again. That silence told its own story. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like surrender. Some saw it as a smart pivot, a return to affordability, but others saw panic, a move made not from confidence, but from desperation. After years of watching riders leave for cheaper, better value bikes from Indian, Honda, Yamaha, and Kawasaki, Harley finally blinked. And it worked, kind of. Riders started paying attention again. Old fans who had given up hope looked twice, but the dealerships weren't ready. Some didn't have Nightsters in stock. Others scrambled to update pricing or manage new interest. The drop wasn't just a change, it was a jolt. This wasn't slick marketing. It wasn't strategy. It was damage control. A quiet alarm that Harley knew things were going wrong, and they had to act fast. Not to win, but to stop the bleeding. Because when a brand like Harley cuts prices that deep, something else is being cut too. Tradition, pride, or maybe just denial. But slashing prices is only the surface. Something much bigger was going on behind the scenes. The uncomfortable truths. When Harley dropped the price of the Nightster, it got riders talking again. But behind that number was a move Harley didn't want to talk about, where the bike was actually being built. A big part of why the Nightster could be priced under 10 grand is because a lot of it isn't made in the US anymore. In fact, Harley has been quietly moving production overseas, especially to Thailand. And it wasn't because they wanted to, it was because they had to. Tariffs from the European Union made exporting bikes from American factories almost impossible. In some cases, those tariffs could double the final price of a US-made motorcycle sold in Europe. At the same time, labor costs in the States kept rising. That made it hard for Harley to compete globally, especially when cheaper, better-valued bikes were coming from India, Japan, and even China. Thailand offered a way out. Building bikes there dropped production costs by nearly 40%. It also helped Harley get around tariffs and reach new markets faster. For the company, it wasn't about selling out, it was about staying alive. But the trade-off came at a price. And not just on paper. And now, more and more riders began to ask the question, if it's not made here anymore, is it still Harley? Because this brand wasn't just about bikes. It was about freedom on open roads, about grit in your hands and pride in your chest. It was steel from the heartland, roaring through small towns and back roads built by neighbors, not strangers halfway across the world. But that shift, quiet, unnoticed by most, did more than lower a price tag. It cracked the foundation of what Harley stood for. It forced the company to face a truth it had never dared say out loud. Maybe the dream it sold had gotten too expensive to build. Maybe the badge no longer came with a promise. Because when the parts come from Thailand, the electronics from Mexico, and the guts of the machine from somewhere far beyond Milwaukee, what's left of the story people once bought into? Yes, the numbers made sense. Yes, the strategy worked on spreadsheets, but something else was lost in that exchange. Not just jobs, not just loyalty, but identity. And for a brand like Harley, that's the one thing you can't afford to outsource. That identity crisis would only grow worse as Harley took a risky leap into another venture. Livewire, Harley's electric misfire. Harley's shift to overseas production helped cut costs. But just as they were trying to keep their roots alive, they made another move that confused even more people. They went electric. It was called the Livewire, sleek, silent, fully electric. Harley pitched it as the future of motorcycling. But the price? Nearly $30,000. That number alone made people do a double take. For Harley's loyal base, the working-class riders who grew up with the roar of a V-twin, that price was a hard no. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about the soul. The Livewire didn't rumble. It didn't shake your bones. It didn't have that wild, mechanical feel Harley was famous for. Instead, it felt clean, polished, and quiet, like riding a Bluetooth speaker on wheels. Harley wanted to reach a new kind of rider, someone tech-savvy, modern, and maybe even eco-conscious. But those people were already looking at brands like Zero or waiting for more affordable electric scooters in cities. And the old-school crowd, they felt left behind. The Livewire wasn't built for them, and they knew it. It wasn't that the Livewire was a bad bike. It had power, it handled well, and it looked cool. But it had no ritual, no attitude, no reason to love it beyond the spec sheet. It felt like something built in a lab, not in a garage. And that's what made the contrast with the new Nightster so sharp. One bike is loud, raw, and finally priced under 10 grand. The other is quiet, premium, and disconnected from everything Harley used to stand for. You can feel it just by looking at them. One says, "Let's ride." The other says, "Look what I bought." Harley wanted to leap into the future, but it almost forgot who had been riding with them this whole time. Ironically, the only way forward meant going back. Back to grit. Back to rumble. Back to a world where bikes weren't gadgets. They were an extension of who you were. And as Harley learned the hard way, tech can be flashy, but if it's missing the soul, no one's going to stick around for the ride. Now, people weren't just questioning the bikes, they were questioning the badge. The cultural lost, when the badge lost its meaning. Back in the day, buying a Harley wasn't just buying a bike, it was buying into American pride. The badge on the tank stood for Milwaukee muscle, small-town grit, and the belief that freedom came on two wheels. People didn't just ride Harleys, they lived them. But now, that badge doesn't carry the same weight. Lift the seat on many Harley models today, and you won't just see American craftsmanship. You'll see parts stamped, made in Thailand, electronics traced back to Mexico, critical components shipped in from China. Sure, some models still have final assembly in the United States, but the soul of the bike, it's been split across a global map. And for a lot of riders, that hurts in ways numbers can't explain. Because this wasn't just about jobs or paychecks. It was about believing that every dollar spent on a Harley was keeping something alive. A factory in Wisconsin, a machine shop in Ohio, a way of life where pride came from making something real, with your hands, your back, your name on the line. That belief that buying a Harley meant buying American wasn't just marketing. It was the reason people paid more when they could have gone cheaper. It was a bond, a story, a promise. But now that story feels like it's slipping away. Because when you lift the seat and see parts stamped from overseas, when the badge once carved from Milwaukee steel sits on a bike made across the ocean, it doesn't feel the same. Not because foreign parts are bad, but because Harley promised something different. It sold rebellion wrapped in red, white, and blue, and then, quietly, it sent the soul somewhere else. And it's not just the riders who feel the loss, it's the towns. The ones that used to shake with welding hammers and glow from the heat of molten steel, where Harley meant paychecks, and paychecks meant dinner on the table, boots for the kids, gas in the truck. Now, many of those places sit quiet, shops boarded up, factories gone, and with them, a part of America that once felt proud to build. This wasn't just a business decision, it was a shift in meaning. And when the meaning goes, what's left behind? The empty showroom. Once upon a time, walking into a Harley dealership on a Saturday felt like walking into a clubhouse. The smell of coffee and rubber in the air, the low rumble of engines firing up, riders chatting about torque, chrome, and weekend rides. It wasn't just a showroom, it was a gathering place, a second home. But that's not what it feels like anymore. Today, many Harley showrooms sit quiet. Rows of shiny bikes line the floors, untouched for weeks. Salespeople stand around rearranging jackets or polishing helmets out of boredom. Some days go by without a single test ride. Some weekends, not a single sale. Bikes are collecting dust instead of miles. Dealers are feeling the pain. Most of them buy bikes through something called a floor plan, basically a loan to keep inventory in stock. But when those bikes don't sell, interest builds up, and that interest turns into debt. The longer bikes sit, the more money the dealers lose. It's a silent bleed, one chrome tank at a time. So they're trying everything, free jackets, discounted service, giveaways, just to bring people through the door. But none of it seems to work, because the problem isn't the bikes, it's the bond. One dealer in Texas put it best: the bikes didn't get worse, the bond did. Customers don't know what Harley stands for anymore. Is it a luxury brand? Is it a rebel brand? Is it about heritage or about electric scooters? The messaging from corporate feels confused, out of touch. Dealerships are left hanging while headquarters pushes out premium models and high-tech experiments most riders didn't ask for. Some dealers are starting to speak out. At first, it was quiet, just whispers in private meetings. But now it's showing up in forums, interviews, and even local news. They're calling for the company to listen, to return to its roots, to remember the riders who made the brand what it is. Because the dealership was never just a place to buy bikes. It was the last handshake between the brand and its believers. And now, with those showrooms sitting empty, Harley is hearing something it never thought it would from its own community: silence. The fall of the beast. The silence inside Harley showrooms wasn't the beginning of the end. It was the sound of a slow fall that had already started years before. Harley's decline didn't come from one major collapse, it came in small drops, quarter by quarter, year by year, and by the time the warning signs were clear, the damage was already deep. In the United States, Harley's strongest market, sales had been falling steadily, not just for a few months, but for years. Young riders weren't buying in. Loyal customers were priced out or pushed away, and slowly, bikes stopped moving. Then came the factory closures. These weren't rumors. These were real. Entire shifts canceled. Workers with 20 years of service walked out with severance checks and no next job. The Milwaukee brand that once stood as a symbol of American strength was now shedding the very people who built it. Wall Street took notice. Harley's stock price began to slide, then plunge. Analysts issued harsh statements. One even called Harley irrelevant in the modern consumer market. The image of chrome and freedom no longer matched reality. The company had become a legacy brand that didn't know how to adapt. And the damage didn't stop at the company gates. Suppliers who made parts for Harley, metal shops, paint booths, electronics factories, started to struggle. When Harley cut orders, they cut staff. Entire towns that once thrived on Harley contracts saw business dry up. The diner that served breakfast to third-shift workers saw empty tables. The gear shop that sold riding jackets had to close its doors. It was a ripple effect that reached deep into small-town America. But the collapse wasn't just financial. It was cultural. Harley once meant weekends with friends, long rides with family, a gift from a grandfather to his grandson. It meant something bigger than just a bike. And when that meaning faded, the rituals did too. The stories stopped. The tradition broke. One analyst said it plainly. Harley didn't fail because it couldn't make bikes. It failed because it forgot who was riding them. And as Harley stumbled, someone else was quietly picking up what they dropped. While Harley fumbled, rivals moved in. As Harley struggled to remember who it was, Indian Motorcycles quietly stepped in to remind riders what it used to feel like. No viral ads, no overhyped launches. Indian didn't need fireworks. It just needed to build solid bikes, and it did. Instead of chasing luxury or futuristic designs, Indian focused on what riders actually wanted: value, identity, and reliability. Their Scout lineup, especially the Scout 60, hit the mark. Riders who were tired of Harley's price tags and confused branding started looking elsewhere, and they found Indian waiting. The Scout had a classic look, strong V-twin torque, and a price that didn't make you wince. The shift didn't happen overnight, but you could see it in Facebook groups, bike forums, and weekend rides. Riders started sharing their stories. I traded my Harley for an Indian, and I'm not looking back. The Scout feels like what the Sportster used to be. I wanted a Harley, but Indian gave me something better. These weren't influencers or brand deals. These were real riders who had waited too long for Harley to listen, and finally gave up waiting. Indian didn't just offer a motorcycle. It offered an emotional connection, one that Harley had let slip away. Their dealerships didn't feel like velvet rope lounges. They felt open, welcoming, real, like you belonged there, even if you weren't wearing the right boots or riding gear. That mattered, because Harley had turned many of its showrooms into high-end boutiques where working-class riders no longer felt at home. While Harley sold nostalgia, Indian sold presence. While Harley kept raising prices, Indian gave people options. While Harley stayed quiet and distant, Indian created bikes that made you feel seen. The dream that Harley once promised, freedom, rebellion, connection, Indian didn't copy it. They just remembered it. And by keeping things simple, honest, and rider first, they earned trust the old-fashioned way, through the ride. And just as Indian carved out space in Harley's shadow, another wave of rivals was already on the move, not from legacy names, but from Japan. And they weren't playing catch-up. They were rewriting the rules. Honda came in strong with the Rebel 1100. It didn't try to be loud or nostalgic. It was smooth, powerful, and priced way below Harley's cruisers. It came with a dual-clutch transmission, making it easier for new riders to shift without stalling. It had real-world comfort, real-world speed, and real-world price. Riders didn't need to know Harley's history, they just needed a bike that worked. Yamaha's Bolt took a different path. It wasn't flashy. It didn't scream rebellion. It just offered raw, minimal power with a low-slung look that felt more city street than open highway. It had that stripped-back style younger riders love. No chrome for the sake of chrome. Just a clean, simple cruiser with attitude. Then there was the Kawasaki Vulcan S, probably the most practical of the bunch. It wasn't trying to win beauty contests. It was built for everyday riders. What made it special was how it fit almost anyone. Adjustable foot pegs, handlebars, and seat height meant you didn't need to be a certain size to ride it comfortably. Add a reliable parallel twin engine with strong torque, and you had a solid cruiser that could do it all without wrecking your spine or your wallet. Together, these three bikes proved something big. You don't need to scream heritage to sell a cruiser. You just need to build one that's easy to own, fun to ride, and priced right. And that's exactly what younger riders wanted. They weren't interested in brand legacies or loud pipes. They grew up with smartphones, not carburetors. They cared about function, ease, and value. Harley tried to sell them nostalgia, but Japan sold them what they actually needed. This wasn't about chrome and culture. It was about usability, access, and logic. And it worked. But the story's not over. Because buried beneath Harley's fall is a quiet chance to rise again, if it dares. The comeback plan. Harley's fall isn't the end of the story. The path to a comeback still exists, but only if Harley has the guts to follow it. And oddly enough, the blueprint doesn't come from another American cruiser. It comes from Italy. Ducati faced a similar crisis. Once loved for its racing bikes, the brand drifted too far into high-end territory and lost touch with everyday riders. Then they launched the Scrambler. It wasn't a super machine. It was simple, affordable, and honest. It had just enough speed, just enough charm, and all the right vibes. It reminded people why they loved Ducati in the first place. Harley can do the same. The Nightster's price cut wasn't just a good move, it was a message. A reminder of the old Harley, raw, rough, and reachable. But that can't be a one-time offer. Harley needs to double down. Make sub $10,000 bikes a permanent part of the lineup. No fake scarcity, no limited edition gimmicks. Real bikes for real riders. And those bikes can't be over-designed. Forget the screens, Bluetooth, and flashy tech. Give riders a loud engine, a strong frame, and something they can wrench on in the garage. That's the soul people miss. Not the polish, the pulse. But affordability is only the first step. Harley also needs to be seen again, not in ads or sponsorships, but in the places where riders gather. Local bike nights, charity rides, club events, small-town rallies. Harley used to be part of the scene. Now it feels like a distant corporation. That's what has to change. Symbolic moves matter. American flag badges, honest sourcing, factory tours, a clear commitment to supporting local dealerships and community rides. These things aren't expensive, but they build trust. And Harley can't fix its image without rebuilding the emotional bond it once had. Because the real damage wasn't just mechanical, it was spiritual. Riders didn't leave because the bikes were bad. They left because they stopped feeling seen. Fix that, and Harley has a shot at roaring again. Because this isn't just a business challenge, it's a crisis of identity playing out across iconic brands everywhere. The collapse of iconic American brands. Harley's crisis isn't unique, however. In fact, it's part of a bigger pattern happening across America. Brands that once felt untouchable are now watching their loyal fans walk away. Not because of what they said, but because of how fast they changed. Look at Bud Light. One sudden marketing move caused a full-blown backlash. It wasn't just about politics, it was about whiplash. Longtime drinkers felt like the brand they knew disappeared overnight. Shelves stayed full, memes exploded, and a once dominant beer started looking fragile. Not because the taste changed, but because the identity did. Target ran into the same wall. Their campaign around inclusivity wasn't met with celebration, it was met with confusion. Not because shoppers hated the message, but because it came without build-up or trust. The rollout felt like a shift, not an evolution. Displays were moved, ads were pulled, and the brand seemed unsure of itself. And when a brand looks lost, customers follow. Even Disney faced heat. For generations, Disney meant family-first fun. But as they tried to balance modern issues with classic storytelling, some fans felt a disconnect. The magic didn't feel the same. The backlash wasn't always fair, but it showed how quickly a brand's identity can slip through its fingers. Now, zoom back to Harley. Same story. One day it was chrome and thunder. The next, it was pricing itself out of reach, chasing electric trends, and talking like a tech startup. Riders didn't rage. They didn't protest. They just left, quietly. That's the scariest part. When customers stop caring, it means something deeper is broken. Loyalty doesn't vanish because people hate the brand. It vanishes when people no longer see themselves in it. The lesson is clear. Change is okay, but it has to make sense. It has to feel like a natural next chapter, not a total rewrite. People will follow if they feel included. But if the brand turns too fast, they get lost, and they don't always come back. Harley isn't just fighting for market share, it's fighting for meaning, and it's not alone. This isn't just about motorcycles. It's about the identity crisis hitting every iconic brand that forgot why it mattered in the first place. The road ahead. The Nightster isn't just a bike. It's a signal flare, a turning point, a question fired straight at the heart of Harley-Davidson. Do we still stand for something, or are we just selling shadows of the past? This isn't about speed, or sound, or spec sheets. It's about belief, about the feeling that once made Harley more than a machine, the pride in American steel, the roar that meant rebellion, the community that meant home. The $9,999 price tag wasn't just a discount. It was a crack in the mirror, and maybe a glimpse of what Harley could be again. But one bike won't fix a legacy. That takes grit. That takes showing up for riders, not boardrooms. Building for meaning, not margins. It means making bikes that belong, not to investors, but to us. Because this isn't just about motorcycles, it's about who we used to be and who we still might become. The next move won't just shape Harley's future. It'll decide if there's still a future left to shape. So what's your take? Did Harley finally wake up? Or is this just another chrome-plated illusion? Drop it in the comments. And if you want raw, unfiltered, no bullshit takes on the bike and auto world, hit that subscribe button. And thanks for watching and stay loud.